Isn't that amazing?
That is.
Yes, it
Good
is.
for marriage.
Yeah.
There you go. There you go.
Must have been Tuba City. So back
City, that's right.
So I'm going to exert my authority as the Zoom master
Yeah.
to impose one small round of structure at the beginning before we just open it up into a blazing free-for-all. And I thought we'd just go around to each couple and focus on, who did we lose?
Tom.
Oh, Tom.
Welty.
Wealthy was here a moment ago.
Okay. I thought
Maybe he's going to come on live.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of interruptions here. So we're going to forge on. So I thought we'd have one more round where people would just talk about any lingering contacts you have had with tuba over the last 50 years. Can you believe it? Or the last time you returned there on a visit, or any, even if neither of those, any allusion to Navajos that you've had that was particularly moving that you want to talk about, or anything you forgot to put in your bio after reading everybody else's bio. And as your Zoom master, I have decided the order in which couples will go for this round. And it's going to be based on the number of years that you were served in the Indian Health Service. So that puts the Tempest squarely in
the number one spot.
in the number one spot, with the Andersons coming close behind. But
no, Welty.
Welty's
Welty's next.
Welty.
Oh, you got
I
that
keep coming
right, and that's what my paper says. I just overlooked it. Before we start, though, I just want to thank the Andersons for the inspiration for this. We have a son that's up in Davis, and for obscure reasons, he needed a safe place to park his car. And so he parked it at the Andersons. And so when he got his car back in good shape, we celebrated with our first busting out of the bubble at a picnic up in Davis. And before long, we were over in a corner just talking about Tuba City. And Molly said, God, we ought to get everybody together again. And so here we go. This is Molly's inspiration. My only regret is that we didn't do it early enough to get Richie and Wissa.
Yeah.
Richie came through for an ophthalmology meeting. I don't know how many years ago was that, Anderson's, but we all got together with Richie then and pulled out our old slide.
8?
Yeah.
I'd say 8 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we had that's going to have to serve.
Zachary's first child was an infant. So you know when that was.
Oh,
okay.
Zachary's first child.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
2009.
2009.
Okay. Longer than 8 years, wasn't it?
Okay. Hey, Tom, just so you know, you're second in line. The Tempests are going to start because they had the longest tour of duty in the Indian Health Service. And I'll just say, I teach the residents and family practice, and when we're going over immunizations, when we get to Pneumovax, I tell them a story about the good old days. And then since then, diphtheria epidemics, the Hanta virus, and now COVID. So Bruce and Phyllis, take it away.
Okay, well, it's so good to see you all. And I'm so glad you organized it. we're learning all about this Zoom, and some groups get it done well and some don't. I was to a reunion yesterday of our medical school class, 60 years, a virtual reunion. And it was kind of awful because all you could see were the tops of people's heads or a piece of their face or something. You obviously all have had a lot more experience doing this. No, we just got your email, John, and we were trying to think of connections. And the first thing that came to mind is this rug right behind me. That we still have a bunch of rugs on our walls, but I don't know how many of you remember this young woman. Her name was Louise Tooney, and I had this rather dramatic encounter with her. She was in status, and anyway, we got to know each other, and she would bring these rugs in. And then we moved to Gallup, and she would send them in the mail. She'd wrap them in craft paper and just suggested price on them and drop them in the mail. And this is one that we got later, but it was a very interesting experience because we've collected quite a few of her rugs over the years. But yeah, and I was saying the other connection is, and this is so much with Tuba, but with the people who were there, quite a few of them have moved to Albuquerque. And there was a fellow by the name of Art Val Spinoza, who was the person whose job I took at Tuba City. And he's now in Albuquerque, and we see each other periodically. And he went into private practice here. Every time I see him, he said, "Boy, I wish I would have stayed with Indian Health Service." He's still regretting that whole thing. And the other one was, you probably remember Joel Saland.
Yes.
Yes.
He's now a pediatrician. I run into him too at meetings. So it's you know, you sort of lose track of who you overlapped with when, you know.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I think they were all around when you were there at one point or another. And you know, we still sort of stay connected through our kids. Our son Peter is a general surgeon at Gallup now. He's working at the Indian Hospital, and our daughter-in-law, who was one of his classmates in medical school, they got married during residency. She's a pediatrician there. So we don't do a whole lot of driving anymore, as you might imagine, but they're the ones that keep us connected because they're still actively involved in everything over there.
And the Dowells are here. I don't know if you
yeah.
remember Butch and Sue Dowell.
He was an engineer.
Dowell, yes, I remember that
Dowell.
name. Dowell.
They
Yes.
lived across the street from us, and they moved to Gallup, and we played tennis for years, and now they moved here as well. Actually, they came here first to Albuquerque.
Connection.
Okay,
All right. Well,
great.
well, thanks. And anything else, or should we move on to Tom and Edie?
Yeah,
We could move on.
Sure.
You'll have plenty of time in the free-for-all that's coming. So when we visited in '99, we visited Tuba, and then part of that, we went down to Flagstaff and visited, had a great visit with Tom and Edie. I think that was '99, right? And,
Wow.
Yeah.
yeah, and so we know
98.
and I'm sure they've stayed connected for in many ways. So tell us, Tom.
Well, thanks. It's it's nice to see everyone and to reconnect. And of course, Edie's involved in getting dental care at the VA, so I'm representing both of us. But we had a wonderful 2-week trip with Molly and Dave, and relived a lot of old adventures that we had together in the Southwest, and visited Tora Weep Overlook and a number of ruins around Landing and Bluff. So that was wonderful. We're back now. We live in McCall, Idaho. It's a mountain town about 100 miles north of Boise. Our daughter is a family doc there, Julie, and interestingly, the practice is pretty, in many ways, similar to what we experienced in Tuba City early on. I mean, you take care of everything that walks in the door, and they don't have an OB there, so the family docs do cesarean sections when necessary. And sometimes you can't transport patients because of snow and driving down a canyon with icy and snowy roads. So it's been interesting to see the similarities in the practice in McCall, Idaho with Tuba City in the early days. Our other daughter, Anna, is in Whitefish, Montana. She completed some training in acupuncture and is studying for boards. And John and Aiko know Anna from birth because Edie delivered at home, and that was her choice. And John and Aiko babysat Edie Anna immediately after birth so that we could attend a Christmas party across
Remember
Don't
that.
forget that one.
I don't know if you remember that experience, John and Aiko, but that was
Well, we remember.
Even I remember it.
it was pretty unforgettable.
We heard about it. We heard about it from.
Yeah, we're still babysitting.
Oh,
The Welty showed up at the party and even danced a dance.
That's what I recall.
Yeah.
That's what I
well,
recall.
Edie continues to be an energizer bunny, even
Mhm.
though she now has a number of medical issues, including some impaired vision and arthritis and other issues. But we enjoy Nordic skiing out our back door in McCall and hiking, and we're very grateful that we're able to still do these activities. And just one other reminiscence of the work with John and Aiko. And John, you were my mentor in community health, and that was very much appreciated. And I remember going to the TB Today conference, and that was about all the real experience or training I had in TB management, but managed TB patients at Tuba for several years and worked with Art Val Spinoza and Bruce Tempest, and Ron Poost was another IHS person in TB control, and he's now in Tucson. So all of those experiences, when we retired from Indian Health Service, we began doing some volunteer work in Cameroon, West Africa, and the experiences in working with the Indian Health Service were very helpful in adjusting to providing care in limited resource situations. One thing that was interesting with the work in Cameroon, we began screening for cervical cancer using visual methods in about 2007. And for the past 3 years have been doing Zoom calls, sharing the photos that the nurses take of the cervix with consultants. So I went to MD Anderson in Houston and got trained in doing these echo what they call it, echo calls. You may know Echo, Bruce, from
Yeah.
University of New Mexico. So now we have a Cameroon Echo cervical cancer prevention meeting every month. And the nurses present the photos of abnormal cervices and get advice on how to manage these. So that's been pretty exciting to be able to be a part of that. So for that, turn it over, John. I don't know who's next in your agenda, but it's great to see
it's us.
everyone.
It's the Andersons.
Oh, okay.
With whom you've just been searching for
It's been 2 weeks.
petroglyphs. We all remember how exciting petroglyphs were back in, when we were back there, and you guys have been pursuing it for a couple
They
of
still are exciting.
And as our pictographs, right?
Yeah, we
Take
still.
it away.
We were just out there with Tom and Edie for a couple of weeks, and we saw something we'd not seen before. But I want to insert one observation that we had. 5 years ago, we went through Tuba City after not having been there forever, and we went to Hanta and went to the big supermarket there. What I noticed was that everybody was speaking colloquial English. Before we were out there, we were all out there, and you come to the pharmacy or the clinic, and people would, of a certain age, maybe over 40 or over 50, would have to struggle some with English with these accents. Now, nothing. I think I saw one old lady in Kayenta, Bashes, 2 weeks ago, who didn't speak English very well. But basically now everybody's talking like we do. Colloquialisms, slang, and all that. So that's the influence of television, I think, and radio and all those things. So, but anyway, we still like going out there. The big surprise for us was put in the email, I think, that Molly sent. We said our older daughter's been in New Haven, Connecticut for an awful long time. I lose track, 20 plus years. She got a PhD in immunology there, doing research projects and writing for the big pharmaceutical companies. But she and her family are moving to Davis. You know,
Oh,
I
my.
Yeah.
felt like Fred Stanford. It's the big one. I'm coming to join you. You know, when
We were just blown away. Had no idea.
no idea, because we figured she's back there. They have two daughters who are junior high age, and her husband has a software kind of job back in New Haven. We thought, well, they'll be there forever, but now they're going to come here. So
They learned that they can work at
at
home,
least she can. So,
and he can too.
yeah.
And he travels some.
The other daughter lives in Berkeley, and she and her husband are architects, and they do high-end renovations, Silicon Valley kind of people. They're not Silicon Valley, but those kind of people, and they're quite busy with that, with two kids, a boy and a girl who are 12 and 10, I
9.
think, 12 and 9 now. So anyway, so it's easy to get to Berkeley, but not so easy to get to New Haven. So when we go to New Haven, we go for longer periods of time, which this time we're going to go tomorrow, as a matter of fact, to a wedding in South Carolina, because my brother's going to be there. And then beyond that to New Haven to visit her for a few days. So,
And I had a few observations about Tuba City to mention. When we went through there 5 years ago, it just looked so different, because we were there a total of 7 years, and in the last couple of years, David was working on the design for the new hospital, and that was built sometime after 75. And that hospital, now they've got another hospital, a newer hospital.
yes.
It's up on the hill to the east, all new street. There's a new PHS housing area out there. And when we went through the housing area where we lived, it was
The Alberda house, by the way.
yeah, that we were in.
That's what we've always called the Alberda house.
It was the Navajo families that were living in those houses.
Yeah.
And you remember we all had green grass. Not anymore. It's gone to the natural sand.
Gone back to
Yeah.
natural. That's
And
right.
the little house we started out in,
On the south side of the hospital.
yeah, a little duplex, because they didn't have enough housing for us, was derelict. It was just boarded up, not being used at all. So time marches on here, I guess. And then I was going to mention the person we've kept in contact with over the years, every holiday season, we exchanged cards, was Art Lippman. You remember from the pharmacy?
Oh, yeah.
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 He ended up in Salt Lake City
Teaching somewhere.
and he was very involved in pain management.
Yeah.
Pain management. And he died maybe 8 or 10 years ago. I've
Oh,
forgotten
really?
now.
So,
Yeah.
so-
I forgot some kind of cancer, I think.
Oh.
Yeah. And then I was going to mention about the hiking with Tom and Edie. Brag a little bit. We went to the North Rim, and we all did a 7-mile hike down into the canyon, 1,300 feet elevation down, and to see these petroglyphs, and of
Pictographs.
course pictographs, and then of course you had to come back out again. And I had thought I was not going to do it. I thought I'm just going to hang out on the rim. I can't do it. But I thought, well, I'll just see how far I can get, and then I'll turn around. And here we all, even in Edie with her impaired vision and her other health issues, she just motors along and does the whole thing. She's really great. It was great.
Anyway, so and that's us. That's our story. We've been in Davis since 1975 and practicing law in Sacramento and raising 2 kids and everything else we all do, right? And we did visit Bruce and Phyllis 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, that's right.
And we did visit Richie and Wissa 3 years ago, as a matter of fact. So anyway, otherwise we're doing what everybody else has done, raising kids, trying to stay healthy, and moving on. So
All right. All right.
Great.
Okay. I think it's the Albertas by seniority next.
Super.
Well, thank you so much for this episode of Refreshing Memories. It's just
Can you turn your volume up? Your volume
Of your speaker.
speaker. We can't hear you.
is this better?
you're kind of in an echo chamber, Bernie. So
I don't know.
Hey, go to the next person. Let's talk about it.
So while you're working on that, we'll go on to those of us that are tied for last place. Carl and Ronnie, take it away.
Okay, well,
What else to go?
I think about Tuba City all the time, and I talk to people about Tuba City all the time. As a matter of fact, our book club was reading a book, and it was a whole story about Native Americans, and it reminded me so much of time, and people were really interested in what we all had experienced. And I think we had gone back to the area. We rented a houseboat on Lake Powell. We did the river rafting on the Colorado. All those were after we left Tuba City, actually. And when we lived in San Francisco, we kept in touch with John and Aiko, and also Sandy Weimer. I don't know if you know, Jan, his wife, had passed away, and
Yes,
he
we knew that.
remarried, and we met his new wife. We went on a big trip to Patagonia, and they went with us with a bunch of other people. But I think about Tuba City all the time, and I say, I was so young that I wish in a way I could do it again, because I would experience it in a much deeper way, this whole spiritual side of it, and we did a lot of the petroglyphs, we did a lot of the hiking, the camping. I went to see Charles Aloma making jewelry, and worked with the Navajo girls at the school doing artwork, and the psychologist there, what was her name? The psychologist at the boarding school, who really got me more into the art therapy, because she wanted to know what the kids were thinking. And I did fashion shows with the girls, and they'd come over to the house and they'd be fascinated with all my clothes, and they put them on, and that was so much fun. But I really realized I wasn't old enough or wise enough to go deeper and experience the whole spiritual culture. And I guess you can only do so much, when you're that age. But now it's so interesting to me. All of that is, where my heart is. And you know, I'd want to go back and do that again. You know, after years working as a psychologist, I'm much more interested in the mind and the body and how different cultures look at things, the Eastern cultures, Native American cultures. And, you know, I've talked to my friends in the book about the sings that we would go to, and how people would come from miles and miles and camp and stay, and, you know, and how powerful that was in healing. And so all of that's really interesting to me now. And so it's sort of like, when do you do it again in the way you would want to do it now? That's what I'm kind of left with. What do you want to say, Carl?
Just a couple things. I'm not intellectual about it. I realized when I was approaching this meeting how much Tuba meant to me and how much you all meant to me, even though there's some of you who I haven't seen for 50 years. I've seen John and Aiko. I saw Rich and Wissa. Shortly after Tuba, we spent a couple days there, and I saw Tom and Edie. But I haven't seen Bernie, I haven't seen Bruce, I haven't seen Dave and Molly. And yet, I think I had more excitement than going back to a reunion of anything that I've been connected with. And I just want to say how appreciative I am that we all had a chance to be together at such a significant time in everybody's life. What an incredible time we've all lived through. And I can expand on that in a way you wouldn't want me to. And the other thing I would say is that, and I don't know, I probably have mentioned this to Ronnie because she's tired of hearing my stories 4,000 times. But I realized sometime after Tuba, but it's been a while, when I was at Tuba, it was a way station in order for me not to have to go to Vietnam. And I recognized at the time that it was exquisitely valuable and that it changed the direction of my life, because the smallest town I had been in and lived in was San Francisco. Tuba was a little different. And I went through an inflection in my life. But in retrospect, some years later, even though I did so many things, I think I have a little regret of not having considered staying in the public health service. And because I didn't really know myself well enough, but I don't know whether this is relevant, but I've never been driven by money in healthcare. I've always been, I'm a teenager at heart, still very idealistic. And I was so comfortable, and it was such a meaningful experience that I would have been very, very comfortable having stayed in for a lot of years. And I think there would have been a lot to do. So I just look at you all with exceptional fondness. I can't tell you, even if we haven't seen each other for a while, how clearly I remember, and thank you all for being part of my life.
Thank you, Burak. Albertas, how are you doing?
Well, is it any better now than it was?
A little bit,
Just a little bit better?
yes.
Okay. Because we're not muted.
Loud and booming voice, please.
Booming voice. All right. So many memories. Dave, we went hunting for partridge once together. I think just one time. And I came home with about 3 pots all of a sudden. Remember that time?
Can anybody else hear? I'm not.
No, it's garbled.
It's
Yeah.
kind of hard to hear. Yeah.
Okay,
Fix it.
can you go
Aiko.
down to the bottom of your screen and don't press stop video, but do you see that button that says stop video? It's either the top or the bottom where it displays all of the buttons. It's
It's
either
the bottom.
Okay, do you see the button that says stop video? Don't press it, but do you see that? Do you see that button?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
across the
Now,
bottom on
do
ours.
you, no, don't press the button, but
Don't
do you
press
see the little up arrow by stop video?
Yes.
Okay, press the up arrow.
That little arrow right in front of it.
Up
Okay.
arrow
Press the up arrow.
with stop video.
Okay, now, do you get video settings? If you see video settings, press that.
We're not getting video settings. Yes.
Video
Okay,
settings.
press video settings, and then you go down to, the second one down is audio. Press audio,
Press audio.
okay? And then it says output volume. Bring that all the way to loud.
Output volume, output.
Right here.
Output volume, bring that all the way to loud.
Let's see. Where's up?
Output volume. I got it.
Okay, is it all the way over?
All the way further.
What?
Yeah, just put it way down the end.
Oh, now you sound okay.
Yeah, you,
Okay.
Verna sounds better.
Sounds
Okay.
okay. Yeah, I don't know, maybe
Okay.
you need to squish over because Verna sounds better.
Okay.
Am I okay now?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Verna sounds real good.
All right.
Exit out.
Okay.
She
All
did.
All right.
It's still working? We're okay yet?
Okay, we see you. And I think if you could move closer to Verna so that we can hear you.
The microphone must be where Verna is.
Yeah, over here.
Either that or Verna's projecting her voice better than you, Bernie.
I do protect my voice better.
Yeah, that's great.
Real
Yeah,
well.
Verna's voice is great.
All right, so Verna should
Yeah.
talk.
Oh, here we
Yeah.
Okay, we're
Much
good.
better.
All right.
Keep talking in that direction.
Okay, I was talking about the potsherd hunting that we did, Dave.
Oh, yeah. That was the last week you were in town.
One time together, I came home with a handful of pots, and you were thinking, "Oh, good grief, this guy found everything, and I've been doing this for years." And I think
I've got
think,
mine right here.
yes, there you go. The rug situation, Bruce. I think your friend came with a storm pattern rug one time,
Yeah.
and it got into my hands instead of yours. You remember that? We still
No.
have that one.
Don't
Okay.
remember that part.
But yes, I'll agree with you, Carl. The life-changing experience that it was there. Beautiful, beautiful kind of stuff. And it was a different experience than what's going on now. We stopped at a few years ago, the Tuba City Trading Post, as run by a Hopi woman, and she was very upset about how the whole atmosphere has changed. Mostly with the Navajo Nation, that it was the power and the funds go to the top level people, and a whole lot of important stuff isn't being done anymore. Sidewalks all bulged up, and no green grass and all that sort of thing. So they were pretty sad about that. But and the contact with people while we were there. Dave and Judy Miller. Some of you know Dave and Judy. Dave and Judy Miller.
Yeah, Miller, yeah.
Yes, okay. Well, he wrote me a poem when I was 29 years old. Okay. An ode to a creaking burn. Birthday comes once a year. Are we hearing this? Is it working?
Yes.
Yeah. Birthdays come once a year, and yours comes too oft, I fear. You're getting old before your time. You've reached decrepit 29 with aching bones and balding dome. I sense you have Bengay syndrome. You try to contact this, conceal this poor condition by passing as a pediatrician, hoping that from kids with cough, a little of that youth will run off, will rub off. Your skin has multiplying creases. You feel as though you're going to pieces. A case in point is the sad position with offspring with binary fission. We have twins. It's time to face it, old man Alberta. This geriatrics is simply murder. But even though you're old and mellow, we think you're an outstanding fella. Happy birthday.
Oh, no.
That's nice.
We just talked to Dave and Judy shortly after the Rich Winslow passed, and because Bruce and Phyllis gave him numbers, and just had a very nice talk with them. It would be great to get them on this Zoom situation. He would call us while we were doing dishes at the sink, and he would say, next time you're helping your wife with dishes, please pull the shade.
Are you charged enough?
Rappos too. It'd be great to get the Rappos involved if we could. So you got our summary of activities and life right now, and Seattle has been a wonderful, good place for us. And our family still staying around. And I don't know if you kept up with the Amazon situation.
Not
The
really.
work that they're doing with headquarters here in Seattle and the headquarters HQ2 in Arlington, Virginia. The helix, you could go online and look at the helix structure that's planned for Arlington, Virginia. Well, our son is sort of their lead architect and all that kind of stuff. And would love to get you a visit here to Seattle, take you through some of the stuff that's going on. It's really quite outstanding.
That's a spectacular building in Arlington. We looked it up. We Googled it after we got your email, and that's amazing looking architecture.
It's just crazy. You say, Dale, how are they going to build it? He said, that's not my problem.
Well, we even got a clip where they're interviewing him, which was fun to see him.
And Vern, it reminded me when you sat around the table with our kids and your kids and you taught them how to read. So they've developed beyond that.
They sure have.
I don't know if you remember those days.
I remember that very well. Yes, it still is my love for life is helping children learn to read and be good students. Yeah, I've done that all my life. But I enjoyed that, and we always had a lot of kids.
Well,
Go ahead.
You gave them a good foundation.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Can you move to the right a little so we can see your face? Okay.
Yeah.
This is up. I don't know which way to move. Here we go.
Okay, there.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
That's a sweet spot.
Yeah, it's just been a good life, and we can relate to somebody else said they didn't go to Vietnam because of public health, and that was our condition too. Vern actually was drafted by the state of Montana. That's where we were from, and he had to have that overruled by the person he was working under at Children's Hospital. So, and my brother went to Vietnam, served in Vietnam, and he just wrote a book about it. So that brought to mind, hey, this is what we missed. It's pretty horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah. he had quite an experience there. So we're very thankful.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I remember Anderson, you won the Jeep race up the sand dunes. Do you remember doing that?
Well, what I'm remembering,
I
what I'm
remember.
remembering is we used to go up to Hanta during the winter occasionally, and it's easy going up, and then you slide down. Except during the winter, the ice is underneath the sand about 1 inch, so you come down really fast.
Fortunately, we decided in the winter, we thought, well, let's just try this little hill first. So we went up and then real fast down. And so that was the end of that. We thought, oh, thank goodness we didn't go to a big one.
Believe me.
Skiing.
Yeah.
It's just about skiing. That's right.
I remember
So we took you on sand dunes, Alberta's?
well, we were there. We didn't have a vehicle to put into the contest, but I think wasn't Rao involved?
Don Rao was
yeah.
up there.
Yeah.
And Lucas
And Dave Lucas probably.
he had a
We have pictures of that, and I think your white van was at the top.
It
We have
was kind of
our
yellow. And
yellow.
white. Yellow and
Ours
white.
was yellow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kind of yellow. Yeah.
Yellow and white. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember walking down the dunes.
Oh, yes.
So our favorite Jeep story is our friends, the Angels from Kayenta, right? He and I had done the rotating internship with each other at Oakland, and she was pregnant, and they came down. She was near term, and they had a Jeep. And he decided her mother was there too. So we all piled in.
And you had a crutches.
I was on crutches from a basketball injury, and we went out into the middle of the desert somewhere, and Rich got stuck. And I learned that the most joyful thing for a Jeep driver is to be able to be called and come to the rescue, which we did with the Andersons.
Yes, that's right.
I could just see the joy on David's face as he winched the Angels.
Get a chance to use
it. He was never so happy. So I just wanted to say, I talked to Sandy Weimer last night, and we had a nice long talk. He's very busy. I'll just say he's busy. He's saying he's busier than he's ever been, and his life is going full bore. So he's not able to be with us. But I think one of the interesting things that he shared with me was when the LA Times did a expose on uranium tailings. And it was only then that I realized that rare metals was uranium, and that all those tailings were left, and the Native Americans, both the Navajos and Hopis, came and picked through the rocks, the contaminated rocks, and used it in structures, living structures, and it caused an increase in the incidence of cancers. And so that was the interesting thing from Sandy. Aiko and I have been back a couple of times. Once in '99, we took our youngest son, and we have 3 boys, and we visited Tuba City. We had bonded with the Greeleys. Angie Greeley was a scrub nurse, and Bobby Greeley, and she was Hopi, and Bobby Greeley was Navajo. So they were a mixed couple, probably more mixed than Aiko and I were. I had played on Bobby's basketball team. And so we bonded over that. And so we kind of lost touch. So I guess we'd been exchanging Christmas cards, but that was about it. and we didn't have his phone number. So I called the hospital, and one thing led to another. And I called him, and I said, Bobby, you probably don't remember me. I'm John Lee. We were there and left in 71. And without a pause, he said, oh, how's Aiko? And so we went over to the housing. Now they lived, I know where Gary Eidsvold lived in that house, not far, just not far from Bruce and Phyllis, right but on the other street. And I'm not sure who lived there after Eidsvold left, but they were in that house, and we sat around the table and we're just talking. And then they said, well, so what are you doing tomorrow? And we said, well, we're going to hike down with our son, Tim, down the Bright Angel Trail. And there was a long pause. And Angie turned to Bobby and said, Bobby, tell them. And Bobby said, no, Angie, we're not going to get into that. And okay, so the conversation moved on. 5 minutes later, Angie turned to Bobby and said, if you don't tell them, I will. And said, Bobby said, okay. Finally, we believe that tourists are being injured on the trail, and that they're being pushed off the trail by our ancestors who resent the intrusion. Both Navajos and Hopis believe that. So that's one story. I'm gonna, before I tell the second story, I'm gonna admit Richard Angell, who I think is on a different time thing, and that might be my fault. So I don't know how many of you remember Richard? Richard, I just told the story about how David winched you out of when we got stuck. And can you hear me, Richard?
I can. I automatically look down and see if my hands are bleeding from jacking up the car so many times. They're okay. And the ignominy that followed.
Yeah.
So what we're doing, Richard, is just we've almost finished the opening round before we get to the free for all. And
good.
I don't know if it's my fault about the time. We'll talk about that later. But right now, it's what kind of lingering contact have you had with Hanta? You want to talk about that?
The only contact I've had is through you, which is even more tenuous. We've been back and visited. We did a trip down the Grand Canyon and did a kind of roots trip. It was just so radically transformed. You know, they just finished the hospital. You know, they had complete ER emergency rescue vehicles instead of the gray station wagon, which had a litter in it. That was our emergency vehicle. They had they had an ER department with an ER doc and all kinds of laboratory equipment. It was quite modern. Of course, I asked the basic question, well, do you think the quality of care and health has improved? And that didn't go very far. We didn't have time to run that out. But anyway, that was my question.
Yeah, I'm sure Bruce and Phyllis can talk about that in more detail. We'll just finish up the first round of our lingering connections. We went back a second time with our friends from New York City. They were Hoosier buddies from elementary school that live in Greenwich Village, and they're very, very sophisticated. And we have a pretty funny story about taking them to Antelope Canyon, which is if you That's just amazing. And it wasn't there when we were there. Take it away, Aiko.
Well, first of all, it's great to see everybody. You look great. And we are all living a long time too.
Yeah.
But you know, before I go into Antelope Canyon, I do want to say we had the same experience. I was saying, Johnny, where is Tuba City? Why are we going there? You know, this is the middle of nowhere. And, you know, San Francisco was having the flower power and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, you know, great music and stuff. And so, you know, and then I thought about it, and it's like, maybe the Midwesterners are right. We're kind of elitists on the West Coast, you know, with our way of life. But, you know, I learned so much living in Tuba City. It was wonderful. And it was really great to meet a lot of the Indian people too. And it was
You
wonderful.
mean Native Americans?
Native Americans.
Our young son, who is a millennial, he's just on us all the time. And I say, it's Indian Health Service. I'm sorry.
Well, and Indians don't refer to each other as Native Americans. They do refer to each other as Indians.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, we went to Antelope Canyon, and there was this guide, a Navajo guide, and she looked us straight in the eye and just told us, you know, I don't want you contradicting me or interrupting me. You know, I've got a lot to tell you, and this is the way we're going to do it. And it's like, whoa.
She was a young woman.
Young woman. And then our friend Evie was taking a picture of her. And she gave her, you know, a lecture about how you don't take pictures of Navajos.
So
and so Evie apologized, and Evie's a strong woman too. She lives in New York, and she's, you know, was in with what was it, Merrill Lynch. And she was, you know, high up. And so she apologized, you know, very apologetic to this girl. But I thought, wow, things have changed, you know. And the people that we kept up with Bobby and his wife every Christmas. And then, do you remember Lily? She and I worked in the lab together.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, Lily. And we've been exchanging Christmas cards. She came and visited us in the 70s in Walnut Creek. And Bobby,
we were there.
Bobby refuses to come because he's afraid of earthquakes. That's what he said. But and then I've been sending packages. I sent 2 packages of masks and you know, hand sanitizers and stuff like that to Lily and to Bobby, because they had a terrible time on the reservation. They had a huge COVID experience.
Yes,
so, yeah.
And Bobby and Angie are living in Old Arriby, and they don't have electric or water.
Electricity or water, yeah. So anyway, and Lily was really grateful. She sent me a needle pointed picture frame of 4 different Navajo rugs. So I thought that was really sweet. And anyway, it was just nice to go back with Tim and with our friends to see how much it's changed. I think they even have a swimming pool, don't they, at Tuba High?
I don't know.
I think they do. You know, and remember how hot it was and how nice it would have been to have a pool.
Yeah.
I just want to amplify one thing that this Navajo, young Navajo woman who totally dominated this city slicker from New York. What she said was, she turned to her and she said, if you ask me, I may give you permission to take my picture. It was just a stunning one-liner that just changed the whole thing. So I want to give Kris and Richard another opportunity now that you're kind of in the flow of things. And also I want to reassure you, we think there's a good chance that we're taping this. If I hit the right button, you will have the opportunity to see what you missed. But now, and we're kind of doing it in hopes that Wissa Winslow, who just lost Richie, who I don't think you knew, Rich and Kris. In hopes that maybe she'll want to watch it, but you can watch it too. So why don't you jump in here and add anything else you want to add at this point?
What would you like to know? What I read a couple of your bios, and one point of interest is where we all went. And we didn't go around the world. We went to Portland, and I had decided that I wanted 1 year of psychiatry before I did internal medicine or something like that. We looked at some of the ski areas in Colorado and a small town, Telluride, which would have been a good place to buy property, I think. And went on to Portland, and I did a year, and I liked it. So I ended up doing the Child Fellowship. And Kris has always been good at raising children and going to school. She got a master's in English raising Heather, who was about, was she about 5 when we went to the reservation. And then you can describe what you did.
Well, I just kept on getting master's degrees. I decided that's what I'm really good at. So I got a master's in social work, because getting a PhD in English, I would have had to go to Eugene to get it. And at that time, there was a superabundance of PhDs in English in the country who were not getting jobs anywhere. So I kind of abandoned that route and got an MSW, and then followed that with I got really interested in planning, so I got a master's in public administration after that.
Yeah, and after the residency, we both had to go to work, and so I worked at a community child guidance clinic, the oldest and biggest in Oregon, something I wanted to do, frontline child psychiatry. Also worked at the VA half-time doing consultation liaison psychiatry, which was a very happy marriage between my love of medicine and psychiatry. And then did a stint for several years as a student health service psychiatrist, which is the only planful thing that I think I've done professionally. That was something we thought would be a good thing to do when we were coming back from working at Guy's Hospital in England, when John and I met. We met taking the last part of our national boards in Geneva, and in the spring of '68, and then learned that we were both going to intern at the same place. So our friendship goes back to, has a very healthy origin.
1968.
1968, and we've managed to have these happy coincidences ever since. I've got to mention the time that we were staying in a small hotel in Japan, and this Japanese woman came in carrying a tray full of beers, and we were in our kimonos, doing the traditional Japanese thing, sitting on the floor, and it was Aiko.
Little Japanese woman.
And it completely floored us. And they had heard about this American who was interested in flutes, a Japanese flute.
Well, they happened also. Yeah.
And we knew that they were in the country, I think, but then they were interested in the sculpture. And then the lady happened to be the lady who knew about the flutes. And so they directed John and Aiko to our little hotel. So anyway, we've been planful a lot in our meetings. Other than that, we meet regularly in Ashland to go to plays together. It's been a wonderful, treasured friendship. Anyway,
I agree, and that practical joke that we played in Japan was I've been waiting for that because Richard, while we were on the reservation, would play practical jokes on me. I'm sending down, you're TB control officer. I'm sending down a TB positive patient, Russell Cattle Chaser, and he's going to be arriving in 2 hours, and stuff like that constantly for 2 years. It was, and
it was the patient of yours that had hemoptysis at the Holiday Inn. That was the one that really got everybody's attention.
Yeah, that one. That one.
Yeah, I made that up. I was a practical joker. I'm in recovery.
Yeah, in recovery. But Richard, I have a question for you.
Yes.
Is it true that you were the president of the Oregon Psychiatric Association?
True.
And is it true that the Oregon Psychiatric Association would meet in Ashland every year and feature 2 plays?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah, we
Oh,
would.
okay. I just heard that rumor.
Yeah, we kind of snuck John and Aiko in. They would have these wonderful meetings, sessions with the actors and playwrights and so on. And they, the psychiatrists, a bunch of people are all psychologically minded, and it was always a very rich discussion. And they were remarkably forthcoming about their own pathways into acting and how they how they brought their characters to life. So that's been a wonderful thing that we've done. So have you had enough of the career stuff? Just the short tidbits. I ended up running the child and adolescent psychiatry residency program, and then I consulted. I always did public psychiatry. That was a holdover from the reservation days. I always was thinking about how do you do good with larger numbers of people, and ended up being the medical director of mental health services in Portland. So that was 30,000 Medicaid kids. Anyway, so I did some research along the way. I just am one of those people who feel enormously blessed to have gotten to do what I got to do. And Kris can describe what she did at one point. She ran, go ahead. You ran the...
I don't like describing.
I'm
not sure why, but well, I worked in mental health too, and worked in a downtown mental health center, and ended up running it for the last 5 years of my career there. So that's all.
It was a very hard job. And while I was working at the county, her budget went from like 20 million to 15 million. So she had a really painful period, end stage of that job.
Yeah, public mental health services have mostly had hard times. They've only had a few, little nice stretches when it was well supported and well funded, but that's kind of the exception, I think, over time.
Well, my experience with all our Zoom conversations is you get off of Zoom and you say to yourself, God, why didn't I say, or I should have mentioned. And so now's your chance. Rack your brains as we probably come to the end of this episode, and maybe the other Zooms that we've done. Once you do one Zoom, you're sucked in. So if there's popular demand, we can do this again. But rack your brains. I think Molly's got something.
I do. An incident that happened somewhere between 1985 and 88, because I was working, those are the 3 years I was working graveyard shift. And so I was waking up at 2:30 in the afternoon, and I'd watch TV with my daughters. We'd watch Days of Our Lives. And after that was the Merv Griffin Show or Oprah. And we had heard that our neighbors who, a young couple who the wife had a postpartum psychosis and she had killed her infant. And that, and Carl, and my daughter had babysat for that
That's just
baby.
one street over.
One street over.
Yeah.
And so we were going to watch this, and lo and behold, there were two psychiatrists in the panel there with Merv, and one was Carl Burak.
Wow.
I was so surprised. And then when I was reading your bio, Carl, I wondered if that was the story that you wrote the book, The Cradle May Fall, or is that the one?
Yeah,
Yes.
that's the one.
I'm going to have to get that.
That I don't.
It wasn't the Merv Griffin show.
It wasn't Merv Griffin.
It was
It wasn't?
Phil Donahue.
Phil Donahue.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, that's what it was. We watched Phil Donahue or Oprah.
I could have. It might have been Merv Griffin,
No, it was
and I
Phil
have
Donahue.
no recollection
No,
of
it
it.
was
No, it could have been Phil Donahue. I don't
It was when we were living in Vermont. We meandered all over the country. So we had gone back to San Francisco, and then we moved to Vermont. And Carl got this call about this woman who had shot herself in the chest, but it was
First shot her baby.
but had shot her baby and killed her baby, but she survived. And he took her on as a patient, and
Couldn't avoid it.
they wrote this book together called
Yeah.
Well, and that was his first book he wrote. He's written a number. Now he's very involved with. He just finished a book. He is very involved in trying to advocate for access to health care for all, and he started a nonprofit called the Patients Party. And so his book is just out now.
Yeah, right. It's called Patients Before Profits. Make America Compassionate Again.
Oh,
Good for you.
Oh, what a great title.
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow.
If any of you would like a book, I do have some of your addresses. I don't have Molly and Dave. Do you know a guy in his 40s whose name is Bjorn?
Bjorn.
Bjorn. Okay.
That's the first name, Bjorn.
Bjorn, right.
No.
One of his closest friends. He actually
He lives in Davis.
He lives in
Oh.
Davis. He and his wife, and he married Eli. He performed the ceremony.
Don't know Bjorn.
But I'd be happy to send a book. Not that anybody has an obligation to read it, but I've spent a lot of years thinking about it and put my heart and soul into it.
Will it be
I'd
on
be
Kindle?
definitely interested.
Will it be on Kindle?
We're both two mental health couples here. Carl's a psychiatrist, I'm a psychologist, and so
I tried to refer towards the end of my clinical career, which is only past now 2 years, maybe a couple of years before that. I tried to access Richard to refer a patient who was coming out to Portland, but I just couldn't connect. I don't know what it was. I knew you were head of, maybe you were mayor of Portland. I wasn't sure.
He was in my heart. He was.
Yeah.
So Carl, will your book be on Kindle?
What?
Will your book be on Kindle?
It will be. Let me just tell you, just happened yesterday. One of my very, very eccentric friends from my Vermont days, who's now about 87 and writes haiku all the time, I sent him a copy of the book. He lives alone in Ukiah, California, and he sent me back some very nice comments about the book and 10 corrections. So I just, Kindle is out there, and actually, as of yesterday, we were going to fix the Kindle because it's a little bit wonky on Amazon. And then, so the Kindle, don't buy the Kindle now, because in a week it'll be corrected. But
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Okay, wow.
Oh, can I say something?
Yeah, sure.
I wanted to continue just one more thing about Lily Walters. Her oldest son went to Harvard. Her granddaughter got a Stanford law degree. And I think her oldest son was the undertaker in Tuba City. And I think it was him who was interviewed on television.
PBS.
His last name was Begay, so that, and I think that was her first husband's name. But anyway, it was really interesting. He said, you know, that he's burying all these people and he knew them since childhood, you know, because he'd lived there, you know, and everybody knows everybody else in Tuba City, you know. So he said that it was really hard. And in the video, you could see that they even had another refrigeration unit because there were just so many bodies. They couldn't take care of it, you know. But and I wrote to her and I said, was that your son? And she didn't respond to that. She responded to other things, but not that. So anyway, that was, I'm sure, a real difficult stage in Tuba City, you know, to go through COVID because they don't have the, they didn't have the medical.
Yes.
And Bruce and Phyllis, you know, a couple of people who died, right?
Well, yeah, we're living in this continuing care facility. You know, there's like 350 people here, and they're all about the same age as we are or older. So we're really a pretty high risk group. Right in the beginning, it got into the healthcare unit that we have, and yeah, so we had quite a few friends died, and then it you know, then everything sort of got shut down and under control. But yeah, it was very difficult in the beginning with a lot of people that we'd known for a good period of time.
We lost 40 people here, but then our son and daughter-in-law and family in Gallup, they lost a lot also.
Really?
Yeah.
Of their age group. Okay. Yeah.
Bruce,
Yeah.
Bruce, did you deliver? I think you delivered our son. Is that? Do you remember?
Dr. Correct did.
Or you made rounds on him in Tuba City? You won't remember probably, but I'm pretty sure that you had something to do with him.
It was Dr. Correct who actually delivered him.
But you did the pediatrics. I think you were covering pediatrics.
Oh, Bernie was.
That would be Bernie.
Bernie was doing the pediatrics.
Bruce was the internist.
Well, you could have been on call. I don't think he was a healthy
that could
kid.
be. That could be. But Bernie and I used to make rounds together just to.
Oh, that's it.
Talk with somebody else.
He treated my pneumonias.
One thing I know that I would have remembered after we hung up was that I did go back to Kaibato because I was involved in a class action suit against the boarding school. There was a teacher there who abused a bunch of boys, and I was part of a team. There was a medical psychologist, anthropologist from Colorado, and a psychologist from Tucson or some other place. And we did this very thorough evaluation of the boys and the parents. But the point I wanted to bring up was that the boys had been delivered by some of you in Tuba City. The parents had been delivered by some of you in Tuba City. So it was just such a powerfully nostalgic trip to get re-immersed in the culture and and to have that proximity.
So it's interesting that article I sent around from the Smithsonian that featured 5 Navajo Native American physicians. I think there was one at the time we were there, but now there are 5, and 2 of them were Tuba City, and one of them had been born in Tuba City, but she was a little bit too young for any of us to have delivered. But it was an interesting article to read what their insights were in the approach to COVID. But I think a number of you have mentioned our experience in the Indian health system, which was a population-based system. And out here, of course, it's Kaiser. And our local county hospital has copied Kaiser, which I've been all on board for. And it's because I think we've all had that experience of being in a system that takes a certain amount of resources and puts them to the best use possible. Global budgeting instead of this damn fee for service that is distorting everything. So I think that's one of the legacies I carry with me, where you get to a certain absurd situation like Carl no doubt is covered in his book. And you think there's got to be a better way. I don't know if single payer is the answer, but out here in California, there's certainly a lot of activity, and a lot of our friends are looking at a system based alternative. So that's one legacy that Tuba City provided us.
Can I say something?
Yes. Yes, Aiko, you're recognized.
During COVID, I've told this story several times because, now we can't, for a while we couldn't we had to be 6 feet apart and not in this enclosed space and all this. And then we went through AIDS too, and I remember Bruce Tempest. You had a patient, I think, that was dying, ODing, and you were doing artificial respiration. You were breathing into him and spitting out the bile that came out, and breathing in and spitting out the bile. And I thought, we can't do any of that now. But that has just remained in my mind for 50 years.
That's good.
Yeah, you're an inspiration, Bruce.
I'd like to, first of all, I'd like to say that I'd like to continue this maybe in 3 months or 6 months, but it's wonderful. And I think there are a couple more people we could add, but I'll tell you an absence of Bruce's story. When Bruce left, I was put in the position of being the chief of medicine, which was totally inappropriate. I am not that good. And I always reached out for help for other people. So this medicine man comes in diabetic ketoacidosis. So I grabbed Sandy Weimer and treated him through the night and then sent him to Gallup the next day, and he made it through the night. But I'm coming back in with about 3 hours sleep early in the morning, and I hear him chanting what I think is chanting. And I was thinking, God, if only Bruce were here, it would have been so much better. But he lived. So, and as I approached his room, he wasn't chanting Navajo. He was singing, Jesus Loves Me.
Yeah, I remember, Carl, you used to call me in the morning. We sort of made rounds together because a lot of the patients were people that I had left there, I guess, and you picked up. And I always looked forward to talking to you.
I've had some, I think probably this is true of all of us, but I feel so blessed, like Richard was saying, with the opportunity to do what I left Tuba to be an ophthalmologist, and that didn't happen. And ended up in psychiatry, which
The eyes were the window to the soul, I said.
when I started my ophthalmology residency, I made a logo up for myself, which was I care. And the I was an I, but the dot was an I. And I was always thinking that way, I care. And it's a lot of long stories, but and one other thing, Richard mentioned that you were a student health physician. I was a very peculiar student health physician. Dave went to law school at UC Davis. And I was in law school at the same time in UC Berkeley. And there was another law school in San Francisco called Hastings. So when I was in UC Berkeley Law School, I was the student physician, or one of them, for law students at UC Hastings. And it was very interesting to hear their experience versus my experience. I was certain that once I got past the first semester, in order to get thrown out of Berkeley, I would have to blow up all the toilets with cherry bombs. Students at Hastings were under tremendous pressure, and it was a very different experience for them.
That was one of the most simply enjoyable, satisfying jobs I had. I loved that.
The student physician thing?
Yeah, that was really good.
I loved it all. My practice of psychiatry was really a general medical practice. I couldn't keep my hands out. And I think it made a very big difference to me, the way I practiced, having had years of general medicine and ER medicine behind me. And I did psychiatry. It was just very different.
Yeah.
I have a story. Can you hear me?
Yeah, very well.
Good.
Well, maybe Vern should tell this story, but if you can't hear him, I can. Do you remember Dave and Peggy Lucas?
Yes.
Yes, very well.
Okay, so they had a baby born during the night, and I think my pediatrician husband did a lot of sucking and spitting like Bruce did, clearing the lungs. But this little guy was pretty sick, and in the middle of the night, they decided they had to fly him to Gallup. It was either fly this baby to Gallup so he could survive, and there was a storm, I believe. Isn't that right, Vern?
Snowstorm. Snow.
And so they had this crazy runway where you had to make sure there were no animals on the runway before you took off. And I'm in my house trying to sleep, and I hear this plane going off, and I thought, oh no, they decided to go. You wanted to tell the rest?
Well, and then we got down toward Gallup, and the snow kept getting thicker and thicker.
Let's move over.
You got to move over, Bernie.
And the pilot keeps looking for lights on the ground and to figure out where he is. And the baby started breathing better, fortunately. And we decided it's time to turn around. Now we should go back. And by the time we landed, he had improved a great deal. And to this day, the Lucases think that I saved his child, but I think it was the snowstorm.
Wow.
Those were such scary things, flying in and out of that little runway.
Oh.
Yeah.
Those airplanes. And remember when they had those huge airplanes that came down there?
Yes.
Yeah. So one Christmas vacation, for some reason, the local pilot was going to fly to the Bay Area. And so I said, well, as long as you're flying to the Bay Area, can we come along? Yeah, and he said, sure. And you can come back with me too. And it was, wow, it was great. So he was a Mormon, and he had a very short checklist, and then one of us made a little wisecrack about doing everything on the checklist before we took off. And he just looked over and said, and as a Mormon, he said, don't worry, God is my co-pilot.
He let Carl fly.
Oh, you're kidding.
That was how short his checklist was.
Now that's a leap of, that's a leap of faith.
I was in the sky and he gave me the steering wheel. And all I had to do was to keep the plane straight while he slept.
Oh.
Oh, boy.
Bernie, I have to tell Bernie, when I think of a happy person, Bernie, I never saw you without smiling. You always had this smile. I've never forgotten it. I have this crystal clear vision, and you were always smiling. And it was a joy.
Yeah, it's like the smile you're smiling now.
Yeah, there it is.
There it is.
Pharmacist at our office, and I had that sort of crooked smile on my face, sort of a little sly kind of thing going on,
Devious.
Yeah.
Well, he was so loved by all his little children, but one time he was bending down to tie a little kid's shoestring. His shoestring was loose, so before he left, he thought he should tie his shoestring. Vern was tying the kid's shoestring, and he looked up at Vern and he said, "Dr. Alberda, your head is coming out on top." Your head is coming
out on top. That's cute.
I have to tell you this. The Alberta's children and our children ran into each other in college.
Oh.
Wait.
So Bernie, can you hear me? And so Bernie ended up taking care of our grandchildren, and now it's like your daughter who's their pediatrician.
Oh wow!
Oh
wow!
Small world.
Wow.
Yeah, comes all back to the circle.
I practiced together for 15 years before I retired. And then she had to come to me and say, "Dad, it's okay. We'll take care of the children. But it's my home."
Move over.
Oh, man. Go
You have
ahead.
to move over to the speaker.
He practiced with his daughter, our daughter Cheryl, for 15 years before he retired.
Wow.
Now she's the head pediatrician.
Cheryl.
Cheryl. They have
Cheryl.
Yeah.
Wow.
Cheryl. Yeah. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Really?
She was like 4 years old when you left Tuba City, I think.
She was
really
born
little.
there. Yeah, she
She
was
was
born
small.
there
Yeah.
in 68. Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
Sorry, Vern, I didn't mean to. But Ronnie and I haven't ever been legally partners, but we've practiced together since 1981.
Oh, cool.
And we're in the same office. And we were sharing an office with a neurologist some years ago when we first moved to Florida. And we both had cards at the front desk. And she saw a new patient who saw the cards, and he saw me, and he recognized somehow that I was the other Burak. And he says to Ronnie, "It must be great practicing with your dad." Good story.
Okay, so we're coming on an hour and a half, which
Molly has something.
is about
One
the
more.
natural life. So Molly's going to say something. Everybody, rack your brain, unload all that stuff you wish you would have remembered to say. Molly.
I'll try to make it short, but Richard was talking about the ambulance upgrade at Hanta. When I got to Tuba City in 68, in the laboratory, we had 4 units of O positive blood and 2 units of A positive. And that just terrified me because we didn't have any of the negatives or any Bs or any. So I put together through the BIA and the PHS neighborhoods, I had a walking donor list. And one night at 2 a.m. or something, there was a car wreck with a couple of Anglos, and the surgeon, I can't remember who it was.
Rappo?
No, it was the old Pravosnik, I think.
Provaznik,
Or
yeah.
Bailey, maybe, I don't know.
I don't know, he's an older man. He needed 2 units of A negative. He needed A negative. Well, I called people in the middle of the night, and one was the head of the librarian, you know, that older white woman who was the head of the
Dottie Eubanks.
the
Yeah.
medical records librarian, Dottie
Yeah,
Eubanks.
yeah.
She was one, and the other one was a BIA teacher. And they came in, and I drew their blood and did the cross matches, and we were having this little party there. They got to know each other, and they, even after they gave their units, they didn't leave. But and actually, this patient got the 2A positive units first, and followed by the 2A negatives I'd drawn, because no, that's not right. He gave the 2A negatives, and he was going to give the A positives if he had to, if he needed more. That was it. And I think he didn't need any more. But by the time I left Tuba City, or maybe it was when we left Fort Defiance, they now had 2 O negatives in the laboratory. But I'm sure, I bet they have all the types now.
Yeah, we have a neighbor friend.
I wish I had known I'm O negative.
Oh,
I may have had you on the list. I mean, you may have been in the card file. I don't know. Because that's the only time I remembered that we brought in donors and drew them.
So we have a neighbor, a kid who has started a $1 billion company called Zipline that does drone deliveries, right? And his thing is in Africa. It started off doing drone deliveries of HIV medicines to get it past the hurdles of the black market. You couldn't get a courier without the medicine disappearing. But now in Rwanda, he set up a blood bank. And so there's one blood bank covering all of Western Rwanda. And they get a call, we need this. They've got the one blood bank full of blood. They load it onto a drone, and
Oh my gosh.
and it's there at the most within a half hour. The drone doesn't land. This guy's a computer genius. He programs the drone to take into account the weather and the wind, and they know where the field is, and the drone gets to a certain place, releases the blood with a little parachute, turns around and comes back.
Wow, that's great.
That's great.
Yeah.
they can use that on the Navajo, huh?
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, good.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'll tell them.
Yeah.
Well, they also used to do a police relay, between Flagstaff sometimes when we needed blood.
Yeah.
And whenever we call and say we needed, emergency, have some blood driven up from Flagstaff, the Navajo police would say, is the patient a Navajo? And I would always say, yes.
So this whole thing about whether to call it Native American or Indian Health Service. So do you all remember the movie that came out on the Navajo Code Talkers? I think it was called Wind Talk.
Yes.
With Nicolas Cage. And I saw a roundtable discussion about the movie. I think it was on PBS, and they had a bunch of these old code talkers around the table, and Nicolas Cage. And Nicolas Cage thought he made this huge error. He said the Indians were doing this, and they said, I'm sorry, I don't mean Indians, I mean Native Americans. And one of the old code talkers just chuckled and came in. Mr. Cage, you don't have to worry about that. Just like somebody said earlier, we call ourselves Indians. We have Indian powwows. We don't think anything about it. Forget it.
Yeah.
Wow,
Well,
so-
I just learned from the Welties that these Anasazi ruins that we visited are not Anasazi ruins. They're ancient Puebloan ruins.
Yeah.
The Navajo never lived in those cliff dwellings.
No.
They were the Pueblo ancestors of the
So
Hopis
the
and
names
the
have changed.
New
that's right.
Mexico Pueblo. Yeah, so they're ancestral Puebloan ruins.
Mhm.
Okay, I've got, before we end, I've got one chat here. And if I'm just worrying if I click on it, the whole thing will blow
No,
up.
no, just
No,
click.
it's okay.
Okay.
That's from Welty.
I can click on it, and it's from Tom, and he said his internet was failing. He had to sign off. Nice to reconnect. Thanks for setting up the call. So that's that. And
Okay.
with that, any last comments?
Just thank you so much for doing
Great
Thank
to
you.
see you all.
Thank you.
that.
Wonderful
For
seeing
me,
you
it
all.
just brings
Okay.
back
Another 3 to 6 months, you might be hearing from the steering committee.
Stay
Oh,
well.
great.
That would be
Okay.
fun. Thank you.
Steering.
Thank
Stay
you.
well.
Thank you.
Molly, you're the chair of the steering committee.
No, no, John, you did such a good job. You need to stick with it.
All right, see y'all.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
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 Don't unclick us.
Richard,
Yes, sir.
so what did I screw up in the time?
No, I did. We got, I'm going to blame it on COVID. We
Okay.
blame everything on COVID.
Yeah, okay.
No, we were trying to get plans settled for our granddaughters are having a coming of age quasi-Indian ceremony. And we've been going back and forth about when it was going to happen. Should we drive up? Anyway, we just got totally preoccupied. And then I remembered, hey, and
Yeah,
so I screwed up. And then I made the comment that, we're just out of practice because with COVID, we just weren't getting
Yeah,
together.
you don't have to be
So,
anywhere.
yeah.
yeah.
Well, it was actually Bernie that pointed out that I might have misstated Pacific Standard Time with Pacific Daylight Time, and I thought, oh my God. So I tried to correct that right away, and I thought maybe that's why you were late. And the whole time I was, oh no.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, I'm glad it was your fault.
Better late than never. I'm so glad we were able to chime in.
Yeah, no, that worked out. That worked out well. And I'm glad you have such fond memories of Japan.
It's such a wonderful.
We're waiting for the other shoe to fall and have you play a trick on us.
Yeah, I know. I was just like Heather. I have one coming to her too. It's a
Oh,
very,
the bonobos?
yeah, the bonobos. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
The time that my truck got dim.